Welcome to the Spring Forward podcast. I'm your host, Spring Richardson-Perry, the organizational change agent that is going to help your business achieve the excellence you desire. If you're a business leader looking to take your business to the next level or simply looking for new ways to spring your business forward, then this is the podcast for you. So let's get down to business and spring forward into excellence. Welcome to another episode of the Spring Forward podcast. I'm your host, Spring Richardson-Perry, and today we have a special guest who has created a remarkable resource to help parents navigate the delicate balance of returning to work after having a baby. So please join me in welcoming Lori Mihalich-Levin.
Thank you so much for having me, Spring. It's such an honor and pleasure to be here with you for this conversation. I'm really looking forward to it.
I am looking forward to it too. And I'm so excited because this is the inaugural episode of us being on video. And so
here we go.
Yes, it's so exciting. So what a great way to sort of pilot this, right? So I am super excited to get started here. I am happy to have you here to lift up this really important subject. So let's jump right in. To get us started, can you tell our listeners about what Mindful Return is and what inspired you to create it?
Yes, absolutely. So Mindful Return was created out of sheer desperation about 9 years ago. And it's a program that helps support working parents broadly. Specifically, we have our roots in helping parents with the back to work after baby transition. So how to go back to work after maternity leave or paternity leave without losing your mind. Now, I lost my mind 9 years ago for sure. When I returned to work after my second babies, I went back to work after my first child and found it challenging. Had my own set of issues. He wouldn't take a bottle. I told myself I was going to kill him by going back to work. None of these things happened. He's a strapping 12-year-old who's almost as tall as me and his shoes are bigger than mine. And then I had another baby 2 years later and I spent a lot of time crying on the kitchen floor. I'm not quite sure what was wrong, but feeling completely overwhelmed by everything. I basically set out to create a program that I wished had existed for myself when I made that transition back. I looked around for resources. I did all the Googling, right? Like how to go back to work after having a baby. And 9 years ago, I found some pretty snarky advice out there about how I shouldn't put a photo of my baby on my desk if I wanted to be perceived as professional. I found, comments about how I was probably going to leak on my shirt, but I didn't find anything that was particularly thoughtful or helpful. So I set out to create a community and an online 4-week course that people could take to help them make the transition much more smooth. And it's for employers to help them retain their working parent talent.
That is incredibly meaningful and personal, right?
Yes.
And that's how these things always start because like sheer desperation. It's like, I need help, but I can't find it. So now I'm going to create it for myself.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yes. So I love it. And, I'm thinking about, as you were talking about how with each child you went back to work, like in my mind, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how did I do this 3 times before? Because for those of you that don't know, I just recently had a baby. She's 5 months old.
Yay.
And I have the privilege of working at home and being with her now. So it's very real to me when you say about, oh my gosh, I'm going to kill my baby because I'm going back to work, because how is he going to eat? Or how is she going to feed? Because I'm very much a proponent for breastfeeding and nursing because that's the healthiest thing for the baby. And so, I'm thinking, how did I do this 3 times before? And I remember being a crazy person, pumping at work every 2 hours. I was a wreck having to leave my baby every single day at the nursery. And thank goodness I found a really good home daycare. So it was almost like having my mom taking care of the babies, but it was still me leaving my child every single time. So,
Mhm.
you have that separation anxiety as a new mom, and then
Mhm.
the second time, then the third time, now the fourth time. I have some experience, so you know,
Yes. A lot
I'm
of experience, Spring.
right. So
Yes.
so it's not as bad, but I am super like thankful that I have the privilege to be here with her, to be there for whatever she needs in this moment.
Mhm.
And so your program is just it just is amazing that you're able to help parents, not just moms, but dads too,
Mhm.
with this transition back to work. Can you share some of the key challenges that parents often face when they return to work? And how does mindful return address those challenges?
Yeah, so there are probably 742 challenges every day whenever somebody goes back to work. Some of the biggest ones really are sleep deprivation, right? It may be that you are only sleeping for a 3-hour consecutive stretch at night. A second challenge that a lot of new parents face is related to childcare. One piece of it is finding childcare, right? Ever since COVID, the number of available childcare positions has dropped dramatically. Some say that 10% of all childcare spots in this country just disappeared during COVID. And we didn't have enough spots to begin with that were affordable and able to be there when you needed them beforehand. And then there's another piece around
Affordable. That is
affordable. Yeah. I mean,
affordable.
it's insane how much childcare costs. And then a third piece is really around an identity shift and a shift in confidence, right? You knew what you were doing at your job before you had a baby. You probably did it for a couple of years, maybe many years. You felt like you had it down. And now you're taking care of this other human being, and you may have absolutely no idea how actually to keep a human alive. And you're trying to figure out how is this combination of my two worlds going to mesh? And if I was out for a couple of months and everything seemed to be moving without me, did they actually need me? And what am I going to look like in terms of, are people going to believe in me and my career trajectory when I come back? There are well documented motherhood biases. So, yeah, lots of reasons to feel overwhelm and guilt and all those things. And what Mindful Return does at the outset is to provide a community of other people who are going through the same thing you are at the exact same time you are, so that number one, you do not feel alone, and number two, you do not feel like the thoughts you are having are just crazy ones that only you are having. The second thing we do is that we provide a curriculum within that cohort that focuses on 4 themes. And the 4 themes are a mindful mindset for going back, so strategies for getting your head in a better place to return. Number 2 is logistics. We help you sort through what it's like to transition your baby to a childcare provider and how to negotiate that schedule of when you're going to be in the office versus home and when you're going to be working with your employer, et cetera. The third piece that we focus on is leadership in the space of returning to work. And a lot of people don't think about the leadership component, but there are so many skills you gain through parenthood that make you really awesome at your job. And we need to be talking about those more. And then the last piece is about ways that you can make sure you are intentionally building and staying in community with other people, so you're not isolating yourself and crying on the kitchen floor all the time. So, we basically provide a framework and a safe landing space for you to feel held while you are making the transition.
Yes. And I think the thing that stood out to me the most in all of that is the skills that you have as a parent, those
Yes.
transferable skills into the workplace. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, so many moms who've opted to stay at home, for whatever reason, because some moms get guilt for going back to work, so they want to stay at home to be there for their babies, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
But moms that also have career goals, career ambitions, and decide to go back to work, that's awesome too. There's nothing wrong
Mm-hmm.
with that. But then you start to doubt yourself and start to think, oh, I'm just a mom or I'm just a wife. And what do I have to contribute to
Mm.
this office, this corporate world, or whatever those career goals or ambitions may be? And then
Mm-hmm.
even in your field, Lori, it's even harder because that's traditionally a white male dominated field, right? And so
Yes.
there's that whole, patriarchal thinking and just a whole other set of problems in the lawyer field.
You nailed
So
it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
it's interesting, right? It's a very interesting dynamic, and I'm so glad that your program addresses that because it's much needed.
Yeah.
Look at the skills that you do have as a parent, the time
Mm-hmm.
management, the prioritizing, the all these things, and usually as
Ability
wives
to
we're
meet.
usually
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say the ability to meet the needs of demanding clients who can't articulate their needs very clearly. That's one of my favorites.
Yes. Yes, that goes on your resume at the top,
Mm-hmm.
and then usually as wives, we're the financial managers too. So we're
Mm.
usually like the CFOs trying to kind of sort of, I always say, rob Peter to pay Paul to make sure all the bills get paid, the kids' extracurricular activities, those fees are paid,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
everything else in between. And so I really love that you've uplifted that and that you provide these much needed solutions to these common challenges.
Yeah.
Um,
If I can just interject, there's also neuroscience research that backs this up. So there's a person at Yale Medical School named Dr. Ruth Feldman, and she has studied the human brain in the 1 year following the birth of the child, the adult's brain, and she has found that the human brain is the most neuroplastic it will be in your entire adult human experience during that first year after you have the baby, and that applies to both men and women. So our brains are literally being rewired in that year after baby in all these new and amazing ways. So it's not just me saying, oh, I have all these great skills. The science is showing that our brains, yeah, we might have baby brain and we might forget things in a fog in the first couple of months. But beyond that, we are actually creating new neural pathways that are developing skills of empathy and leadership and things like that that are really, really useful to workplaces. And I wish workplaces knew about them and talked about them more.
this is very, very interesting because this is the first time that I've heard someone back their program with science. And so
Mm-hmm.
we usually hear these support groups for parents. They're usually led by like licensed therapists. And
Mm-hmm.
so not that it's not backed by science, but this is the first time that I've actually heard this information about the
Mm.
brain really having those creating those new neural pathways. And so this is very interesting to me, and this is one of the unique features of your program that I really appreciate. What other unique aspects or features of your program set it apart from other resources that are available to parents?
Yeah, great question. First, I just have to give credit where credit is due. I learned about this neuroscience research from my dear friend Amy Henderson, who wrote a great book called Tending Parenthood and the Future of Work. So I'd highly recommend, excuse me, highly recommend checking out that book. In terms of what sets Mindful Return apart, I'd say the community component is one. The fact that you're in a cohort with people from all different industries and sectors and types of jobs, and yet you come together and are able to sort of cross-pollinate ideas and realize that, wow, this is a human issue. This isn't just my own workplace's issue. I'd say the other thing is that we have an amazing alumni community. We've had over 2,500 people go through the program at this point. And so once you take the course, you are tapped into a private Facebook group and a private LinkedIn group. We host 2 free calls for our alumni every month just to give them ongoing working parent coaching. So it's sort of you're walking into a much bigger world of working parents whose shoulders you can stand on as you move forward in your own career.
I love that. That's amazing. And I think it's super important to lift up the fact that you see it's not just something happening at your job or just in
Yes.
your
Yes.
industry. You
Mm-hmm.
see people across different industries, across different jobs going through the same thing that you're going through at the same time. And that
Mm-hmm.
that support is invaluable to have someone who just totally gets it, right? You don't have to really
Yeah.
explain yourself. You just you just kind of get to just breathe.
Yes. People get
Yeah.
very vulnerable very quickly. I think it helps that it's not your best friend. It's not the person across the street. That there's a sense of like being able to open up to someone who, you just met online, but you're both exactly in that same spot. I'd also notice that, or I would note that there are so many similarities across countries and cultures and backgrounds too that I was a little surprised about. So I started having people show up in the Mindful Return course from all over the country because they just signed up for it online. We had a member of the Dutch Navy. We've had, engineers in Australia just appear, right? And here I am thinking, oh gosh, they're in a country that is a lot more friendly to women or that has much better parental leave. And guess what? They still go through the same issues. Now, yeah, there are some differences. Maybe they're transitioning back late at a later date, or they have some different supports in their communities, but they still have fear and anxiety about handing their baby over to a stranger. They still have the guilt about going back to work. They still have to navigate a schedule with their employer. So there are so many more things that we have in common than things that we have that separate us.
That is so interesting because I would think the same thing, right? In different countries, you're like, oh, they probably don't worry about what we worry about
Oh
because,
no.
yeah, they probably have more support or more this or more that. And obviously, they still need the same help that we do. And so that is
Mhm.
super interesting. I'm wondering, what country have you seen has maybe sort of the most supportive laws to parents
Mm.
going back to work?
Yeah, I don't know if I can pick one, but there are a couple of examples that I'll share. One is in the UK, there is this statutory shared leave that allows the dad to also take a significant amount of time. And they also have a sort of mandatory flexibility law where you have the right to ask for flexibility in your job, which I love. In Canada, you can go up to 18 months. I do have some opinions on what is too short and what is too long. I think for everybody, it's a little bit different, but I think 18 months might be a challenge in terms of returning back to your career path. Another thing that I'll note is in France, there is so much more support around the recovery process after birth. Um, it is everyone who gives birth has automatic access to pelvic floor physical therapy, for example. I mean, it's just like built into their system. And so I think there are examples all over the globe that we can learn from and that I wish we would take pieces of and incorporate into our own systems.
Yeah, this sounds really interesting, and it's gonna make me go and do some more research when we
Yeah.
finish this. But um, I'm having the same thoughts. Like, why can't we see what everybody else is doing and take the best pieces of those
Mhm.
things and
Mhm.
see how we can incorporate that here? Because that's just amazing to me.
But
Um,
paid leave would be number one, right? Lots of countries have paid leave for like a year, and we have nothing nationally. So,
nothing.
that's the first step is let's get a federal paid leave policy passed. Please, please, Congress.
Yeah, and hopefully we're moving in that direction. I know after
I hope.
COVID, we had a lot of states to implement more things around the FMLA or just implementing a paid leave
Paid
act.
leave. Yep. And now we have the Pump Act, which is helpful for those who are pumping. It gives more rights to people to be able to carve out time for pumping and an appropriate space for pumping for up to 2 years after the birth of the child, which is awesome. So yes, there's progress. We're not there yet. I don't know where there is, but we're not close.
Right, right. We don't know where there is, but we're
Yeah.
we're moving towards there, slowly but surely.
Hmm.
Well, this is awesome. So let's shift gears a bit, and tell me, what advice do you have for employers looking to create a more supportive and parent-friendly workplace?
I love that question because when employers say, I don't know what I can do, I'm going to go back to their 796 things you can do to help support working parents. I actually have 6 buckets of things that employers can do. And I know that's kind of a long list, but I'm just going to like share the list of 6 because if you're an employer and you're like, okay, I want to do better by my working parents, start somewhere. My top tip is just like pick one thing and start somewhere. But here are the 6 categories that you can focus on. Number one, mindset, right? So how you are talking to and talking about working parents really matters. If you're managers haven't yet been trained in how to cope with someone going out on parental leave, get them some manager training. Publicly celebrate the birth of the child. Things that are, it's an attitude, right? Number 2, policies. Do you have a gender neutral parental leave policy that does not have any sort of primary or secondary caregiver distinction in there? Take a look at that. Do you have any flex policies for when people come back? Do you have a ramp up and ramp down period that they can use? Studies have shown that the ability to ramp up instead of coming back 100% is a huge retention benefit for companies. Number 3, communication. Can you help create some conversation guides between managers and direct reports about topics they should definitely discuss whenever they go out on leave? Also, do your employees know what benefits you do have? I'll share a little story. I was at a law firm and I was there for 18 months. And believe me, I read everything that came into my inbox. And I didn't know for 18 whole months that there was backup childcare available to me through the firm. As soon as I found out, I started using it. But make sure that if you have a wonderful benefit, that people know how to access it. Okay, so that's number 3 is communications. Number 4 is programs. There are coaching programs that you can bring on board to help new parents individually. There are backup care programs. There's lactation support that you could be providing. So any number of programs. Number 5, community and connection. Do you have a working parent affinity group at your organization? Or an ERG, an employee resource group? Is there a way that parents can find one another? If you're a smaller organization, can you even set up sort of a mentoring program so that new parents can be paired with an experienced parent? And I'd be remiss if I didn't add mindful returns programs to the list of things you can offer to build community within the working parents in your organization. And then number 6, the last one, data collection. Do you know how many people go on leave? Do you know how many of your moms take their leave and what amounts they take? Do you know how many of your dads take the leave that is offered? Do they take the full amount? Are people utilizing the wonderful benefits that you may or may not offer? What are your retention statistics for parents? Do your caregivers stay or do they go? What are your promotion statistics for parents? Do they have opportunities for advancement when they come back? These are all things that you can know your numbers around that will help you identify where you might need to do more work. So that's just, 6 little ideas of things that you can get started on, but believe in the person for the long haul. If you believe in this person and you support them through this transition, they will be fanatically loyal because you gave them so much support during this huge life transition.
Absolutely. And I've always said that those companies that have those nice benefits to be able to utilize and be more flexible with the parents. And once the parents are able to use them, they come back and they're ever so grateful. And they have an employee for at least 10 more years, and that's sort of unheard of in this time because there was once a time in our parents' time where you got a job, you were thankful because you got that job, and you stayed on the job for 20 years and you retired, right?
Yeah, we don't live like that anymore.
We do not live like that anymore. Those days are long gone. But, you can at least prepare to have, if you have an employee where they need to take leave and you have these flexible policies, they are a lot more grateful, they're a lot more comfortable, and so they are likely to stay longer, at least 5 to 10 years.
I have some data on that, Spring, if I may.
I'd love to hear it. Tell me.
So at Mindful Return, we wanted to know if offering our program was actually making a retention difference. And so we looked at the first 1,000 people who went through our program, and we did a longitudinal study over a 5-year period to find out, were they still at the same employer? Now, I'll tell you that nationally, about 63% of new moms go back after leave, and a third are lost to that role. In the Mindful Return data, the first 1,000 people who went through the program, 85% of them were still there after 5 years. You have just, changed your delta by 20% by offering some supports and an attitude that says, we want you to come back. I'd also note 93% of the women were still in the workforce. Even if they had switched employers, they were still, somewhere that was keeping their career moving. So the supports really, really matter, and they make a tangible difference in your both recruitment, but also retention efforts.
That's obvious. I mean, clearly, if they 83% are still at that job,
85.
like
Yeah.
85% within,
Hmm.
what was that, 5 years?
5 years after they
That's
took the
amazing.
program. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Can you, so this makes me think about a specific success story. Can you share
Hmm.
one that maybe comes to mind for you, for
Yeah,
someone?
absolutely. I can think of two quick stories. One is I was on an elevator in a law firm in Washington, D.C., just going to work one day, and this woman started staring at me in the elevator, and she was like, "Are you the mindful return person?" I said, "Yeah, that's me." And it turned out she worked at a firm that was at the same in the same building as mine, but not my same firm. And she had taken mindful return, and she said, "I just have to thank you because you made the transition back to work so much less of an event." And I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. How was your return? How did it go?" And she was like, "It was fine. I thought through all this stuff. Like, let me tell you about my baby." So it was just nice that her anxiety had really been quelled. The other success story that I'll share is that there was a woman who was very much afraid to ask her workplace for some flexibility when she returned. She wanted to shift her hours and she was not sure how her boss would react to it. And we have a whole lesson within the Mindful Return course about daring to ask and figuring out what you need and being able to show up. And so she had a lunch with her boss prior to going back from parental leave. And she shared with us afterward that she arrived and she was so nervous and she was afraid to ask. And she spelled out her case for why she should have some different work hours. And her boss said, "Oh my gosh, I thought you were coming here to tell me you were quitting. What else do you want?" And so it was just this story of like how recognizing that your own expectations may be very different from what other people around you are thinking is happening. And she had a community that helped her build up her confidence to be able to ask for what she needed, a community that supported her through the return, and then who cheered her on when she got what she was asking for.
That's amazing. And her boss was probably just as nervous as she was.
Yes. Yeah. She thought she was there showing up to quit.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they're like, I hope she's not quitting. And she's like, oh, I hope they let me take these
Take
days. And
this
so,
different schedule. Yeah,
yes. And
exactly.
so that's awesome. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
This is so amazing, Lori, that
Thank you, Spring.
you have this resource. And this is, why I wanted to uplift this, because this is important. And again, this is right now my lived experience, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not integrating back onto someone else's job. I am working
Mm-hmm.
at home. So um
Yeah.
that's a
Ball
whole
of
different
wax.
thing too.
Yeah. And that reminds me that just this past year, we launched a Mindful Return for Entrepreneurs program. And it's run by a wonderful woman named Ariana Tabawada. And she wrote a book that's all about taking parental leave when you are self employed. And so she's the coach within that course. And we're trying to make sure that there are different pockets of people who have different needs and that we're serving them as well. We have a course that's specifically for parents who have children with special needs who are trying to navigate work and special need
Mm.
parenthood. So like we're trying to very much focus on needs as they come to us and then organically create something that's going to support them.
Oh, I love it. Guys, this is amazing. Please, 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 if you are a leader in your organization or if you are a new parent and you're looking for support, reach out to Lori. How do they find you, Lori, to connect with you or to get Mindful Return services?
Sure. Thank you, Spring. You can find us at mindfulreturn.com. There's a page on there, a little tab specifically for employers. There's a tab for individuals. You can reach out to me directly at Lori, Lori, at mindfulreturn.com. We're on all the usual social media channels. I do a Tuesday tip for working parents every week on Instagram. And you can feel free to connect with me on Facebook as well. And what's the other one? Oh, LinkedIn. Finally, I wrote a book called Back to Work After Baby right here that you can find on all the places one finds books. And you can listen to my husband and I riff with parents on the Parents at Work podcast too.
I love it. I think that's so amazing that you have a podcast with your husband. My
With
husband's
my hubby. Yeah, it's fun.
that sounds like it's a lot of fun. My husband and I
It
have been
is.
kind of talking about doing something like that too. So
You should, Spring.
we'll
Yeah,
see.
do it. Do it.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lori. I appreciate it. Guys, I hope this was super helpful to you. Again, if you want to reach out to Lori, she's giving you all of the ways to do it. Lori at mindfulreturn.com. You can go to mindfulreturn.com and check it out, or you can reach out to her on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Lori Mihalich-Levin, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Spring. This has been such a fun conversation and a real honor. Thank you.
Yes, I hope this helps you guys to spring forward into excellence. So until next time, guys. Thanks for listening to the Spring Forward podcast. I hope you were able to capture some of the gems that were dropped and are excited to start using the information to help your business spring forward into excellence. I would love to hear some of your biggest takeaways from this episode, so connect with me on LinkedIn or Facebook, or tag me on Instagram at springy_springtime. And don't forget to subscribe to the show so you don't miss an episode. And if you'd like to learn more about how we can work together, visit the website at timetоспringforward.org. That's TIMETOSPRINGFORWARD.org. And until next time on the Spring Forward podcast.